All right. So before we get started, we'll just talk about some of the agenda items, and we'll also talk about your experiences because not everybody here is a fresher, meaning somebody who either didn't work or didn't have the course before. Most of you guys have experience at least somewhat with testing in general, but if you don't, then we'll talk about that also once. Um, so let me just start by sharing my screen and screen. Okay, desktop 1, desktop 2, that should be the one. There. All right. All right. Again, I just want to thank everybody for joining, and a few things I want to get out of the way before we can get started. One is that not everybody is going to continue. Not learning test automation, or at least learning to get into automation, may not be for everybody, and that's one thing you'll find out within the first 2 weeks. So at least exploring and seeing your options is definitely appreciated for being here. The other thing that I would say, if you do have background noise and you want to ask a question, try to be in a quiet room so we can hear you clearly. During this session, we'll also be as interactive as possible. Again, we want to do live. And the other thing is, if you feel like maybe later you'll just go over the recording, try not to think about that. Recording is just for backup, and try to absorb the materials as you see or as you get, and have more engagement so that way you can enjoy and I can enjoy teaching also. Some of the agenda item for today is introduction to software testing. And again, like I mentioned, most of you guys here that may have experience on software testing, and some of you guys don't. So I'll probably spend the first 10 minutes just exploring and maybe ask you guys those questions about software testing in general, especially those who have been working, and especially those who actually did a course in the past. Then we're going to talk about efficiency in software testing. So when we talk about efficiency, that means is you're not going through one by one yourself, but rather you have a machine do some of your work, something that you want to, maybe something that you do daily basis, repeated, schedule basis. So you want to make sure that those are taken care of by a machine, and that can increase your efficiency because you can focus on something else. So that's one of the things that we're going to talk about, and that's one of the main focus of this course, right? So we will definitely learn what is testing, because obviously I want to make sure that we understand testing fundamentals, because automation is part of it, and then we will dive into automation. Then we're going to talk about fundamentals of test automation. Some of you guys may be fearful of automation. Okay, this is something may take 6 months, or sometime it may take a very long time for you to learn such a thing. And programming is another item which may make it more difficult, because you may not have any programming experiences. So today we'll try to give you some comfort, at least to give you some encouragement that you can actually dive into test automation. And you probably will need minimum amount of experience with coding, and coding will be part of this class anyways. The other thing we're going to talk about is AI, and AI has been part of software development, and not only testing, for quite some time now. And so we'll talk about how we can leverage AI and be able to automate faster than before, but also we can learn it on the way. You can learn it on the go when you're automating. So we'll talk about that, and part of this class will be making you efficient with AI. meaning how you would be able to use AI to do your work. And that is not necessarily, prohibited at workplace, because many workplaces are embracing AI, and they will, give you access to their AI platform when you are writing code. So that's also a good thing. So it's always good to learn AI. If you have AI on your resume, it's also going to be really, really attractive. Let's talk about different tools of automation. Roles of programming in test automation. Again, one of the biggest fear of testers, or at least somebody who's jumping right in to this career, is that programming. I don't know programming, and it's really hard. So at least my goal is to make it as easy as it is for you, and also to make sure that you can learn it, but also at the same time, it's not really tough on you. And then again, introduction to AI and leveraging AI would be the last few items. We'll talk about some Q&A. I think 5 minutes is probably not enough. We'll probably spend a lot more time. This is a 1-hour agenda, but we will spend the remaining time discussing. And I'll ask you guys questions, because most of you guys here, at least have some experience. For example, familiar names that I can see, Rahul, I got Galina here, and Piero, we got Shahid. So most of you guys are pretty familiar, only like few, with an exception, that may not be familiar with, testing in general. Okay, so let's just, explore the idea. Let's just work on it together. So the first item, introduction to software testing. And then real quick, when we are testing a software as a QA, we're basically just going through every possible, combination of scenarios that we can. So that way we can break it. We basically want to find any flaws, any issues during testing, basically finding issues in lab rather than in, outside world, by actual customer. And our job is to make sure that we are reporting those bugs, right? So we do a lot of testing, and maybe we'll find few bugs right after doing a lot of testing, because we have to go through every possible scenarios and combination in order to find those bugs. Is there anybody in here that is completely new to testing in general? Because I want to make sure that if that is not the case, then we can move right on.
Yeah, I'm pretty new to this.
Yeah, me as well.
Okay, so that's good. Again, always ask, so that way we can explore a little bit more. Okay. So when we talk about software, and we're talking about building of a software, so that's something that we call SDLC, right? So software life cycle. And in that software development lifecycle, there is numbers of things that goes on in order to make a software. So basically, anything that we need from start to finish of a software is basically the software development lifecycle. So number one is gathering requirement, right? Okay, number two, who can tell me this? And obviously, like I said, only few people here are probably new to this SDLC term, right? What is number two, guys?
Maybe design.
So after gathering requirement, okay, design. And these are in high level, because a lot more detailed steps we can add, but these are in high level because design can include, wireframe and maybe like, reviewing of the design. So just keep those in mind. But we're going more on the high level side. What is number three that you can think of?
Implementation.
Okay, so when you say implementation, I'll just put it simply, coding basically, right? So writing the code. So when you have a requirement, you already know exactly how you want your software to be. And then when you have a design, you know visually how your software should be. So then what happens is the code comes in place where implementation is done by developers. So let me just, write some notes on the side. So code by dev, right? Designed by AX, UX designer, basically, and the requirement by, business, right? Business side, business analyst, whatever you want to call. And number 4, which is the most important thing, right?
Testing.
Testing, right? This is where we come in, right? This is where we meet today. Testing, right? So in the software development lifecycle, testing is probably the most important thing, right? And this is one of the reasons why, because you could probably ask yourself the question: if developers wrote the code, wouldn't it be easier for them to just finish testing and then save a lot of money? Why would they want to pay you 110K, right? And sometimes it's more than that, because the company spends maybe 150 an hour, and then you end up getting like 60 an hour, because obviously there is consulting companies that they take their cuts, but the company spends a lot of money for testing, and it's because it's really, really important for a product to be tested, right? And for various reasons. So we'll talk about that. After the testing, what could be the next?
Maintenance.
So you're gonna go after the testing right away, maintenance. There's nothing else.
Production.
Like
Production,
deployment.
right? Deployment, right? And like I said, guys, I know most of you guys, some of you guys that are here, been through this, so just bear with me, because it's good to have a fresher, refresh your mind, and then we can go. And then obviously today's class doesn't mean that we're gonna go ahead and cover everything. Today is just to get you excited and get you to understand what's coming for the next sessions, and what you will be learning, and what might be valuable for you. Because if it's not valuable, it makes no sense for you to even do this, right? Because you're taking 2 hours or 4 hours of your time per week. So you want to see the value. You want to make sure that
I think your mic cut off.
Yeah, there's issues with the mic. Yeah, definitely there's issue with your mic.
Wait, there's a lot of background noise.
There's a lot of static, Joe.
Can someone test it? I see.
Well, you need to rejoin, I think.
We can't hear you.
Still getting the background noise.
because of my thing. Okay, can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. I don't know where I lost you guys. So we did the maintenance, right? So let me put do not disturb, because maybe that's one of the reasons. Very good. Okay, so number 6 was maintenance, right? My question to you guys for SDLC, like this is basically for making a software, right? This is like a formula for making a software, and from the beginning to end, that everything that you need in order to build a software, like first you have to have requirements, like understand what you need. Why do you even create a software? What the software will do, why would a customer use your software and pay for it, right? And then you got the design where you want to make sure that it's as easy as possible. It looks good to people's eyes, it is attractive, right? And then coding, you're basically translating the design and the requirement into machine readable format so that my machine can read and give feedback. And that's when the coding and implementation takes place. And then we have testing. Testing is basically when we as a QA, again, your role, QA analyst, QA engineer, we go and explore the application. We do it feature by feature. It really depends team by team, so we can talk about that. But when you are testing a software, you're basically trying to find issues. And in order for you to find an issue, you have to, go through every possible route that you can. You have to act like the user of the application, and you have to act like various type of users of the application, and trying to see exactly, what ways you can find issues so you can report before the deployment. Okay. And so now, where is the automation fits in? And we can talk about it. And deployment happens, and then maintenance is basically when you have feature requests, when we have any change requests, maybe like, they found an issue after the deployment and it gets fixed, it still has to go through this process, this SDLC process, okay? So hopefully you guys understood what is SDLC. Now testing has its own life cycle, right? So in the testing side, you have number one, and this is the engineering process of testing. So if you can remember this, you already know, you're already an expert on testing. And obviously, at least in theory, right? And then once you learn how to do it, once you learn the automation, then you can actually have experience on doing it. But number one, for testing, what would you do? So, let's ask one of you guys question. I'm gonna start picking names so that way. Piero, what do you think number one for testing?
The first thing you would need to do is identify or come up with the questions first.
Anybody else want to help?
Maybe review the documentation that the customer gave.
Okay, so studying the requirement you mean, right?
Right, exactly.
Okay. Study the requirement from business, because how else do you know that application, how the application should behave? First of all, you're not business. Second, you're not the one who came up with the bright idea, and you don't define the product. You're only there to, make sure everything is done properly. And so that way, the only way you will know is that if you look at the requirement that was written, if you look at the design document that was done, and so that way you can come up with sets of checklists, right? And that'll be your scenarios to see if the application behaves certain ways. And if that matches your expectation, or that's pretty much your expected results versus actual results. So you'll probably write down all the expected results as early as possible as a scenario. So I'll say number two would be writing test scenarios. And sometime, in actual environment, we skip the scenarios because this is in our head, because we already know the application so well. We may not have to write the scenario, but I still prefer, I would still prefer writing the scenarios, because it's good to, put it in, document it and then move forward with after that. So now that you study the requirement and then you write your test scenarios, who can tell me what is a test scenario?
So is it like the expected result versus the actual result of a test case?
Yes, but think about, okay, so think about this way. Let's say if I tell you, you have freedom to take any method of transportation from LaGuardia to, let's say, Times Square, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so now I want you to come up with what are some of the methods that you can actually take as a human. What are some of the possibilities that you have?
Like
You know?
taxi, bus.
Hey, boss.
Mhm.
I
And
would guess.
each one is a scenario. So let's say you first take taxi. Okay, fine. Then you decided to walk a little bit and then taxi. That's another scenario. You decided to walk, taxi, and then bike, right? Because you found city bike. Another scenario. For example, if the city bike never existed, that scenario would be unrealistic, right? So we come up with every possible scenario, but we don't include unrealistic scenario. So for example, the other unrealistic scenario would be taking a jet to, you know, to the Midtown or to the Times Square, which is not possible, right? So we don't test that. Taking a helicopter to the Times Square is possible, right? From LaGuardia. How many people will do it? So think about this way: your application is used by millions of people, and maybe 1% of the user are the richest people, maybe like 1% will follow that route and take a helicopter. Now, when you test it, you may actually skip that test because there is chances is so low, and you'll probably upset a very small amount of customers, right? So sometimes you will prioritize your test cases based on how many customers could be affected. Obviously, if you have the time, you will cover those test cases. And these are called edge cases, right? So, you know, obviously we got to do deeper dive. Today, we're just going to go at a high level again to get your attention and understanding into, you know, testing, and then like going more on to the exciting part, which is automation. So just think about that. All these scenarios, you know, like think about what do you bring as a value to a company when you get hired, when you're testing, and you think, okay, this is so easy. Developers wrote the code. All I do is like act like a user and test it. You know, it's not even fair because their salary and your salary is same. And then you have to think like, wait a minute, what do I bring into the table, right? And if you think that you're bringing nothing, you know, you would be wrong, right? Because your job is to like investigate, right? And find out every possible scenario that a customer can or will try, right? Suppose, let's say you miss one scenario that the customer can try, and you said, ah, man, nobody's gonna try that, and you left it open. And after the release, after the deployment, all the customers are using the application, and now somebody found a loophole to skip payment, for example. And now, let's say you work for Amazon, and now you have within the 1 hour window, millions, if not billions of dollars were lost because you thought that nobody will try that. Somebody found it, they reported to their friends, they had a Facebook group, WhatsApp group, whatever is the case. Everybody, you know, started jumping right in. People are getting free products. Now, obviously, developers are going to jump right in. Your team is going to jump right in to mitigate that issue, fix that issue, but it will take an hour. Maybe it's going to take some time to figure out what really happened, and then what kind of, you know, where do they have to make the change, or even the rollback, you know, reverse all the code before the release, and go back to the previous state. It will take some time, but in that meantime, millions of dollars were lost, right? Just because you decided not to test one scenario. So if you really, really think about it, you're an important person in the development team. And the way that you can bring value to a QA team is that if you think about all those scenarios, not by just doing automation. Automation is to help you to be efficient, right? And to be able to do your work when you have repeated test cases, like when you have time to time, you have to go and run schedule basis, right? But what makes you a great QA is if you come up with all this combination of scenarios that even developers cannot even think about, right? That includes critical thinking. You have to think critically and not let go of anything, you know, and none of these scenarios is going to be stupid, right? You may think like, oh, no, nobody's going to do this. I don't know. You're going to explore, because as a QA, you're going to get all the time in the world, right? You can actually say, I'm not okay with the release. I can't release it today, or whatever. I didn't finish, or when I'm not comfortable with the release because of this and that, right? And you can still take more time to do the testing. And that makes you more valuable. And that makes you somebody who in the team that everybody's going to look up to. And they'll probably come and ask you, hey, are we okay to release today? And you're going to be the person to say no or yes, right? And if you want to be that person, you have to be somebody who's going to apply critical thinking and come up with all these combinations of scenarios, just like the example we gave, Manhattan to Times Square, and somebody can take like bus, train, taxi, all of them at the same time in series, right? One after another. Can you tell a user not to take bus? You can't, right? They can do whatever they want. And that's why we have to test it to make sure, okay, if somebody is willing to take the bus after the train, they are able to, right? So just see the same analogy. If you really want to also think about, like on the construction side, right? Like if you're building a home, right? I'm going to give you the same example. If somebody is building a house, the first thing first, the owner is going to want to know how, what they want from your house, right? So gathering the requirement, knowing exactly how many kitchens and, bathrooms and all of that stuff. Then you have the designer will do the design, maybe architect will do the design, and then builders will build it. And then you have the testers. At this point, the tester is going to be the home inspector, right? And so if you really think about your role as a QA, you will be a home inspector, right? In the software business, right? So just hopefully that helps you to visualize who you are. After the test scenario is test cases, right? Test cases and test scenario, the difference is, who can tell me?
Test scenarios are like more of like a high level, like it's more of like an overview. It's not
Mhm.
as specific as what a test case would be, where a test case, it shows you like the steps and what the expected result would be.
Okay, anybody else wants to jump in?
I have a question.
Mhm.
Let's say, well, people are the human error sometimes. So I was wondering, let's say if someone forgets a test scenario that could cost the company a lot of money.
Right.
That has happened before, I'm guessing, right? Like, how do you
Mhm.
avoid that, making that mistake?
That's exactly what we covered, right? Just now. And hold on, let me just finish writing my thoughts. Okay. So that's why I recommend, I highly recommend to write the test scenarios, because when you join a company, you're like consider a subject matter expert on testing, right? So sometimes they will not ask you for a test scenario. They will just go for the finished product, which is, oh, is it done testing, or did you write the test cases, right? And that's about it. They're not even caring about the test scenarios. When you write all the test scenarios on papers or on, let's say, on an Excel sheet, for example, you're able to see which scenarios you're missing, right? And then you can add those. In addition to that, if you want to cover your back, you write the test scenarios and then you have business approve them. You go back to the business
Mm.
analyst, right? And you tell them like, hey, I just want you to take a look at my test scenarios and let me know if I missed anything. So now you send them an email that's documented. And now let's say you made a mistake. Let's say you work for Chase Bank and you made a huge mistake. You missed a test scenario. The company lost $10 million within 2 minutes of time that the code was out there. Now they can't really blame you, right? Because you already have business approval. If basically if they want to fire you, they will have to fire the business person as well, right? Because they had to also contribute to your work. So think about that way, right? But always good to have seconds of advice to make sure that I'm hearing myself. Let's see who's unmute. Okay, there we go. Cool. So that's always good to have. Like one thing that I'll tell you for the first freshers, right? Somebody who gets the job for the first time and you want to impress, you want to stay in business, and you also want to maybe at least keep your work ethic really, really good and feel good about it. Do everything, what the STLC says, like for example, like follow all of these steps and produce those documents and then provide them. get approvals and all of that stuff. So that way, what happens is that you know that you did your job, and you don't have to, go to sleep thinking, oh, maybe tomorrow I'll get fired. Okay, so the difference between test scenario and test cases is basically test scenario is just a one-liner, right? You write it in a high level. You write exactly what was the actions that you did as a user and what is the outcome to that action that the application will respond to. And then the test cases are basically you write every single steps. The reason why you write that because you create the test cases so that way you don't have to refer to any other document in the future. So let's say you have 500 test cases in the last 3 months. And every time the developers make changes, you have to execute those 500 test cases. And it's because why? It's because you want to make sure that pre-existing features are not affected by the new changes. So now if you are executing those 500 test cases, you don't want to be like going back to your scenario and be like, oh, I have to now test this and test that. You now can go more on the machine side, meaning you can act like a machine because you have test cases that describe step 1, do this, step 2, do this, step 3, do that, right? So test cases are very detailed and provide steps, step-by-step process on how to test a specific scenario. So again, you got the scenario and then you put a lot more information to the scenario and it becomes a test case. So test case is a step-by-step process on how to do the testing. So that way you can actually test without knowing any prior information. It will include anything like, for example, prerequisite, login information, URLs, and test credentials if you need to. And all of this will help you to do your testing without going back to the requirement. Okay. After the testing is done, right? Once you create the test cases, you execute, right? And I'm going to go a little bit fast because I think, we're spending too much time in this area. And obviously, when we do a session where we focus on SDLC and SDLC, we're going to go in more depth. So now, when you execute, what happens, right? When you execute test cases, what you hope to find?
Bugs and errors.
Right. So you find bugs, right? And then you report the bug, right? That's our job, to report the bug so that developers can fix it. And so this is where you can say logging and tracking, basically. So we're gonna basically track and log to make sure that the bug is properly reported. And then also if developers needs any information for that bug, we will provide that also. Anybody have any question related to bug? Like, okay, what is bug, All right. Before we move on, you can ask.
I
Alright.
wanna know, yeah, what is bug in the login?
Yeah, sure. So let's say you have test cases. Remember the test case? Test case is basically your matching actual output with you're matching basically expected output with actual output, right? Meaning like you already wrote what you're expecting from your application, right? In terms of different features and functionality. So for example, login, right? You know that if you enter a username and password and click on login, you should be able to log in as a user, right? That is a happy path, and that is using the right credentials, right? That's one. What if a user logs in with username but then wrong password? Should they be able to log in? And they should not, right? Because wrong credentials shouldn't be they shouldn't be able to log in. So now that becomes the negative test cases, right? So that's your expectation, is that the user should not be able to log in. So now in this case, when you executed number 2 test case, which is the negative one, where a user entered a username and now they randomly was able to log into somebody else's account, even though the password was wrong, that's a bug, right? That's like a very, very critical bug, right? Where they can actually access somebody else's information from the application. So now you will be reporting that, right? Logging means that you're going to write exactly what happened and where. you're gonna write more details like, what are the steps that you followed in order to get to that bug? What is the version of the software when you observe this issue? What are the, screenshots, screen video? And what is the browser that you used? What is the browser version? What are some of the errors that you've seen on the screen? All of this information you're gonna add, and you're not gonna simply just send a bug by saying, okay, it's not working, right? That's not professional. That's not what the testers do. So you're gonna add all this information, create a report, and then send it to the developer. And developer will then fix it, and then you will do retesting to make sure that that bug no longer exists. Okay. Number 6, after the logging and tracking, is gonna be, what is it, guys? Let's go quickly so that way we can go into more like automation side. And again, like, just to remind you guys, today's class is to just, going very high level on most of the topics. So that way, you guys know what's coming and at least what you'll be achieving through the session. Anybody knows what happens after number 5 to number 6? And and guys, I know who actually worked in the field here. So come on.
Is it like you pass or fail the bug? I'm not sure what it's called.
Is it regression testing?
Retest, defect retesting, regression testing. Yeah.
So that should be like part of it, right? This is bug lifecycle. That's another lifecycle, right? Which is like just like that. You have steps. Number 1, you're finding the bug, right? I'm gonna write in one line, so it's gonna be easier. You log the bug, right? Number 2, when the bug is fixed, you retest it, right? So is the developer fixed, right? Number 3 is gonna be you retest that. Retest it, and developers, QA is gonna retest it. And if it passes, number 4, if it passes, then you close the bug, close it passed. And number 5, let's say it's the same thing, but it's gonna be 2 ways, 2 outcome for number 4. You reopen it if it's failed, and you work with the developer to get that fixed again, right? So this is the cycle, the whole cycle that you will follow when you find a bug. Now what happened to number 6? This is part of the bug life cycle. So now, just to remind you, you have SDLC, you have STLC, and you have bug life cycle. 3 life cycle that you have to remember to be a professional in QA, right? SME in QA. That's all. That's all there is. Nothing else, right? And obviously, you will perfect your knowledge onto these 3, but at least to begin with, these are the 3 items that you will have to remember to be a fundamentalist, or at least on the QA side. Everything else that comes with, like tools and automation, it's just to make you more efficient. And we'll talk about those. Number 6, guys, let's see. You guys worked, some of you guys worked in the field.
Does it get sent to production deployment after that if it passes?
So after the so if it passes, we go into the release, right? That's when you go for the release approval, right? And obviously regression, other things I didn't mention it here because it's part of execution. That could be, we can talk about regression here in this block. So after the release, again, we also maintain our test cases. If something changes, right? So if something changes, or maybe they added a new feature, whatever is the case, we go ahead and add more test cases, right? So that's what we do. So this is 3 items that you have to remember to become a professional QA. And it's not that hard. It's not like you have to remember maybe like 100 items, right? These are the 3 things to be really, really somebody who can actually talk about what they do as a QA, right? So just think that. Also the bug lifecycle is right here. 3 items, okay. Now let's talk about efficiency. And again, if you didn't understand because this is your first time ever on testing, it's okay. And I think I also provided some courses to those who joining for the first time. So you should have some knowledge, but if you don't, we will go more deeper at some point to these 3 topics. Now, let's talk about efficiency in software testing. So this is probably going to be the time when I'm going to start picking you guys for questions. So let's say manual testing, right? So if you are testing, let's get ideas, right? So pretend that all of you guys are working for Amazon.com, right? Anybody here that don't know what Amazon is, right? You can let me know, but I'm sure you use Amazon at some point, right? Now using your critical thinking, right? Let's create some rough estimate of the test cases, okay? Using your critical thinking for test scenarios, how many test cases do you think you can create for various part of Amazon, right? Amazon as an application, right? So let's say first, what does a customer do on the application in Amazon first? What do you think the first thing they may do?
Log in.
Log in.
Log in. Okay, so for login, tell me how many test cases do you think we could have possibly?
Okay,
Keep in
instead of
mind that customer can log in through their Facebook, customer can log in through their social, like Google and things like that, right? And I don't know, it's Twitter.
Like 4 at least.
I would
That's
say
gonna
at least
be,
like 30 or 50.
yeah, I mean, I would think at least 50 plus, right? I mean, I would come up with a lot more because Amazon, they're probably paying you a lot. Plus, login is going to be very noticeable. Like, let's say you missed a scenario, they'll notice that, okay, somebody just missed something on the application, right? So let me just bring this here real quick, and then let's go to Amazon. Amazon.com, and this is the incognito. So look at that. Anyways, HFL, just to make sure that we can actually go through. All right, so I'm not logged in yet. And so if I click on this, by the way, I'll tell you why everything is being highlighted, okay? In a minute. So if I go to the login, right off the bat, email and mobile, you got 2 options. So there's 2 scenarios already. Somebody can log in with email, somebody can log in with their mobile, okay? And then there is a scenario where somebody can create a brand new account and then log in, right? So that's already 3. So if I was to enter, let's say, a mobile phone number, 347, whatever, I'm gonna put a random number, 3333, and I click continue, and it's asking for password. And let's say I enter a wrong password, that's another scenario, right? Let's say I enter a right password to log in, that's another scenario. Let's say I enter nothing, that's another scenario. Let's say I only enter special characters, okay? That's another scenario. Let's say I only enter numeric value, just numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's another scenario. Let's say I enter only words, right? And then go for it, right? Maybe because password requirements could be like word and numbers. It should have at least 1 number, and things like that. Let's say I enter the word password itself, right? Let's say, okay, so everything that I just said, the scenario wise, right? Again, I'm not even applying the critical thinking, I'm just going on the fly, but everything that I said is going to be applicable for also email, because we did all of this for phone, and now let's see. So now if I go in the email side, okay, obviously email is wrong. If I go on the email side, all these scenarios that I just spoke about earlier is going to apply to the email as well. So if, let's say, we talked about 10 test cases, that's 20 already. And then we're not even talking about forget password, right? What is the flow of forget password? What is the flow of needing help, right? So really, if you think about it, it becomes like a lot of test cases. Now to answer your question in terms of why everything getting highlighted, this is automation, right? And I'm gonna bring up everything that we did get recorded, okay? Let me just bring that up. So give you guys a little bit of sneak peek what you will be using in terms of automation. Anything that I did on the application was recorded, meaning you got the code, right? The code was created, everything that was done on that part of the application, right? So right off the bat, you know that there is a huge leverage to use this tool to create the code for your test automation, if you ever to do test automation. And so we'll talk about that. And this is just to get you excited about test automation. So as you can see, you're right off the bat, day one, you can start to write test automation and not even have to know anything about coding, right? But that doesn't mean I'm discouraging you to not to learn coding. We're going to teach coding because you have to know really what these are and stuff like that. So that way you can be very, very efficient. But is it necessary for you to be a coder, to be a tester? I don't think so, right? I think you add more value if you're a QA engineer or QA tester, you add more value if you know the product more and you come up with those scenarios as we just spoke, right? Those scenarios are more important for you to come up with. And then you can worry about the automation. How can you make your life much easier with writing this automation without having to do a lot of coding? Now, think about adding, top of this, you're adding ChatGPT. That just makes your life even, 80 times easier with ChatGPT. So we're going to talk about it because I'm going to make sure that you guys know what ChatGPT is and how do you use it for test automation. And how can you actually go out there and write test automation. So we're going to probably within your third week or at least the fourth week, you're going to be writing test automation without any issue, right? Maybe you're not going to understand it, but you're going to be able to write your test automation within the first, maybe like the third week or fourth. And then as you're writing, you're going to face problems, right? Because not everything is solvable by AI. And you're going to then have to ask your AI, ChatGPT, exactly, what went wrong. You're going to learn from that wrong and you're going to struggle, you're going to learn from it. And that's how you're going to get better and better and better. So the idea is that you start off writing automation, getting help from AI, as well as this tool that we're going to use. And as your experience goes deeper and deeper, as you're writing more and more test cases, you're going to be actually really, really good at automation where you may not even need the AI. You may not even need to think about using this tool. You may be able to just type it in yourself, right? But you need to start somewhere. And that's why it's easier to start, from a place where you can see the results than not have to struggle from the very beginning. So just keep that in mind, okay? I want to go back to the Amazon side. Okay, so we get the maintenance. I think we all clear with the SDLC and all of that. The login wise, okay. So now that we understood how many test cases we can write for login, I would put rough estimate, right? So don't quote me on this. Rough estimate for like, let's say login is 50. And then maybe like searching product, because there's just so many products in Amazon and you could be searching so many products of categories and things like that. I would say 500 just for search of the product. It could be so many. I don't even know, right? I can't tell you if this 500 even nearly what, the test case should be. Then selecting a product, right? Selecting a product, maybe like, let's say you found a product, you want to select. Now product has customizations, right? Some product you will be able to select small, large size, some product you can change colors or whatever. So if you really think about all these combination, I think like selecting itself will be at least 200 to 300 bare minimum. And again, these are estimates just to give you an idea. Once you select a product, what happens next, right? Everybody knows what Amazon is. Once you select a product, maybe the next thing could be like, adding to the cart. You might be even not done with your, shopping. So it might be continue shopping, right? and doing more selection, right? Continue and then select again. That could be, like another, like, 100, because, obviously select already is covered. And then add to cart could be like 3. Okay. Tell me why add to cart will have so many, right? Because when you think about add to cart, you're just basically putting it in the cart and that's it, like a click as a user. But yeah, change my mind and tell me this is not a 10 scenario, for example, or 10 test cases. What some things that you can test as a user, as a QA? What are some of the combinations that you can think about for add to cart and apply your critical thinking?
You can also remove from cart.
Okay. What else? That's just 2 scenario. You add it and you remove it.
You can add more if you want more.
Okay, so you can go ahead and go back and add more. That's 3 scenario.
Could also remove.
So remove discover.
Delete from cart.
You can delete from cart, which is remove.
Go to checkout.
You can go
Save
check out
for
as
later.
another. Save for later.
Oh, the quantity. You could up the quantity.
Exactly. You can put whatever quantity you want. What if you up the quantity, but then the supply, they only have 5 in stock? Should you test that?
Yeah.
Yes.
definitely.
Right. So that's one. What if, like, let's say, you just abandoned your cart and you saw something else on Wayfair and you just went to Wayfair and you came back and everything is gone, all the things that you added, right? That's another scenario to test, right? What if the third-party application? So remember, when you go to the cart, sometimes some of this application pops up, oh, we have a better pricing in this link or that link or whatever, right? So now Amazon probably has agreement with, let's say, Honey, for coupons of those coupon sites, whatever is the case. What really happens if those are interacted with the Amazon, cart, right? If they click on it, will it save? If they click on it, will it apply? What about the coupons itself when you're adding to the cart, right? Did the coupon carried or not? What if you don't want to add the coupon? Let's say you're generous, you like the product, you don't want to add the coupon. There is a check that you did in the beginning of selecting the product, but now when you're checking it out, you feel like, now I want to pay the full price. What happened then? So
What if the coupon expired too?
exactly, what if the coupon is expired? What if the coupon expires like 1 hour ago? What if the coupon, like, you can really think about a lot of scenarios, right? So I'll just put, just for the good measures, 200. Then we got the checkout. Now checkout, you can probably just think about, it's gonna be crazy, right? Because
Yes.
for checking out, we're talking about thousands and thousands and thousands of product. We're talking about customized product. Oh, by the way, so add to cart, maybe not 200. This could be a lot more, because we didn't even talk about customization, right? Let's say you're ordering a t-shirt and it takes an image as a customized, right? You want to make sure that if you do the add to cart, that image, exactly the image that the customer installed, or sorry, uploaded, is the same one, right? You want to make sure that you get a preview with that image, or whatever is the case. What if custom jewelry? You want your name on a like bracelet or something, will that show the exact image that you previewed and things like that? So there is a lot more. So 200 is probably not even enough. But anyways, just to put the good measures, I will just put like 500 for checkout, because it's just way too many products Amazon has. Now, with all this, let's do a rough estimate of test cases. And if it, I'm trying to get somewhere to give you guys a little bit of idea here. So we got the 1,000, we got 1,500, 16, so 1,650 test cases, okay? Now, if you agree with me, right, these total 1,650 test cases, let's say we're doing maintenance to Amazon, right? And business wants to add maybe like a new product that will have its own customization. It could be, let's say, diaper with the actual baby's picture on it, whatever is the case, right? And now you're allowing any diaper that can be added, to the cart, and it has some sort of pictures uploaded to it, or some sort of wording, whatever is the case. So this feature was added, and you are a QA, okay? You are the QA person, and they said, okay, this, this new feature's added, and you went through your STLC and you did your testing, right? What are the things that you have to make sure before release? What is one concern that you have after you just tested the feature, right? You studied the requirement of the diaper, you wrote your test scenarios, you then wrote the test cases, you executed, you found no bugs, you went through the whole life cycle, and then you're ready to release. But then what concerns do you have at this moment?
Existing features can break.
Exactly. What happened to my existing features? Are they still working? How do you know? How do you know if the existing feature?
You test those as well?
You test on your existing test cases. So all 1650 has to be tested. Now, to give you guys a bit more headaches here, this feature is just a single feature. In 2 weeks time frame, do you know how many features can go into an application? In 2 weeks, just 2 weeks. Just give me a rough estimate. I mean, if you work somewhere, you can tell me like your situation or your current situation. How many features do you think in your team in the 2 weeks time frame will go in?
Mine was like 7 to 8.
7 to 8, right? Okay, that's generous, right? That's sometimes it's 15 features, 20 features, depending on the team size and the complexity, obviously. So now, if you have 20 features, okay, let's just be 7 and 8, right? Let's be our situation. So that means you're going to execute your test cases for that feature plus 1650 to make sure that nothing else broke in the past. All the previous test cases didn't break. In that 2 weeks, right? Okay, first of all, okay, before we move on, when you test cases, when you execute test cases, in order to see that nothing else broke like the existing feature hasn't broken or anything in the existing feature didn't break, what kind of testing that we call it? What do we call that testing type?
The regression testing?
Regression, right? So let me just go ahead and add this here. Regression test, right? And regression test is basically just a lot of test cases that will just identify any issues, if there is any, to the previous features. And the regression suites, this folder or suite, let's say, just gets larger and larger, because as those features are coming, you're having more and more test cases that you have to add it to the regression suite. Now, typically in 2 weeks, obviously 1650 is not possible in that 2 weeks time frame. How many days do you think you need to go through 1650 test cases if you work for Amazon? You have to do like login test, you have to do search, select, and you're just a human, right? I mean, you don't have to four arms, right? So think about it.
So would it be like just me testing everything, or with like a team?
Let's say, okay, I'll be generous. Let's say you got a team of 3 in that team.
And it's depend if you're doing manual or automation.
Yeah.
Right now you're a human being. You have nothing else, right? So you'll be doing as a human, a subject matter expert, right, of the application. You know Amazon in and out because you work for them, right?
Like 3-4 weeks.
You giving me 3 weeks of estimate for 1650 test cases. That's like great, the time frame, because see, like, let's estimate one test case, how long it's gonna take without rushing. per test cases. Let's do an estimate, right? Let's say each test case, because you don't want to rush, takes 5 minutes. You have to open your website, you have to think about the credentials and all of that stuff. 5 minutes, right? Now, 5 minutes times 1650, that is equal to 8250. If I divide that by 60, right? That's 137 hours. Okay. So that's roughly, well, like if it's 3 people, now let's see, divided by 3, 45 hours. So that's like 1 week. If you have 3 QA engineer in the team, you have to divide that into 3 people, and that means you're going to be doing overtime for that week, 5 hours overtime per person. Okay, so you're going to be doing 45 hours instead of 40 hours. Now, in that 40 hours of full week, you have meetings. You probably have 40% of the time you're in the meeting, right? So that means you don't have that. So that means per person is going to take you have to triple that because of the meetings, right? So you're talking about 3 weeks per person. Now, if developers are done and they deliver the code and you said, I need 3 weeks for testing, but then your whole SDLC, which follows a 2 weeks time frame, for example, a sprint, right? 2 weeks only. And they gave you 2 days to test it. Crazy, right? It's not even possible. So that's when you have to think about efficiency in software testing. Because why? Because this 1650 is repeated test cases. And now you probably all also know why it's important for us to write test scenario and test cases. Because I mean, I'm surprised nobody asked this question. Why do we have to write both? The test cases, you write it because you don't want to think about anything. You just want to execute. So everything should be included in your test cases. All the details that you need in order to continue testing. So that way you can basically, just like a machine, just execute, done, no bugs, move on to the next one. Execute, found a bug, report it, move on to the next one. You don't want to say, okay, this test case is about this. Well, how do I test it? You shouldn't be asking that question, because when you're writing the test cases, you have to keep in mind that anybody from the street can come in and actually just follow the steps to execute. That's how the test case should be, which means step 1, do this, step 2, do that, right? So you have to basically include all that details for yourself. And when you write the test cases, it's not necessary that you will be the one who's executing it. So that's why you have to make sure you write your test cases in that detail, okay? So now that you just learned that 1650 could be a test case that you will execute every now and then, meaning every 2 weeks, because your release, let's say release cycle is every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks you guys release, right? That means every 2 weeks you have to do 1650 test case execution. Top of that, you're adding 10 to 15 test cases per 2 weeks, meaning like you have not 10, maybe like 50 to 60 test cases to this list. You're just making the list bigger and bigger and bigger every time you release, right? This becomes much bigger every time. Now, in this case, you're gonna be bottlenecking the entire development team, because developers are gonna be done. And then when it comes about testing, you're gonna end up taking 3 weeks just for regression. And does it happen in the real life right now? Yes, it does. Some projects, when they follow linear-based development, which is called waterfall, they do go through that 2 to 3 weeks time frame before they go for release, right? But very few teams out there actually follow that practice. The more modern practice is that everything should be done, meaning the entire STLC should be done for a piece of software, meaning part of the software should be done within the 2 weeks time frame, which is called sprint, and that is called agile scrum. So we'll talk about agile also. So in that case, what happens is that in that 2 weeks, how can you even give them a confirmation to say, hey, I'm okay with the release, right? If you have 1650. So that means you and your team cannot practice agile. You and your team cannot really follow, a 2 weeks time frame, because it needs more time for you to execute the regression test. So that's when your manager will beg for more time, and he will probably wake you guys up, and you'll have more time to do the testing. But then let's say you have automation in place, but let's say you have all 1650 is done by a robot. What is the advantage to that? If let's say all of these test cases is done by a software that you wrote, okay, your team wrote, what is the advantage? What do you think, how long do you think it's going to take?
It's you can do
Much
it in a lot
faster.
shorter time.
Like how short?
Like you can shave off like a week at least.
I mean, I wouldn't say it's worth it, right? If it's only 1 week shave off out of 3, then I wouldn't even say automation is worth it, right?
Probably
It's
be
still
done
2
in
weeks.
like a day or two, no?
Overnight.
2 days.
2 days not worth it. And I'll tell you why. I mean, obviously anything helps, right? Any hold on a second. Hearing myself. Okay. Any leverage helps, meaning like let's say you shaved off 2 hours, still helps. But I'm just saying for as to me, like if I shave like let's say 1 week, it's not worth it, because think about this way. Your automation is running on a server, and then it should run for like a week. For example, okay, let's just say 1 week, right? On the 3rd day, the computer crashed because it's been running for such a long time. The computer can no longer take it. And now you have to start over, right? Or let's say you have to restart it, whatever is the case, right? If you're testing the entire, you don't know exactly what failed, so you have to restart the entire, test suite for whatever reason. It's just gonna cause more and more time. So it's gonna do more harm than good. Plus the maintenance is gonna be really, really tough. So automation, if you really, really want to shave off time, you can do as much as you want to. Like, let's say I want to run it, like your manager should come and tell you like, hey, I want these 1650 to run in under 4 hours. It's about what you want and your team wants and your manager wants, right? So let's say 4 hours is the requirement. In order to fit the requirement, you have your 1650. Let's say the 1650 takes totally, let's say 40 minutes. Oh, sorry. 40 hours or whatever, I don't know. 40 hours, right? So in order for you to have this 40 hours cramped into 4 hours, you have to think about parallel testing, right? Because it's machine, you can have more machine to do the same work and divide the work among those machines. So in order to make that to 4 hours, all you need to do is have 10 machines, right? 10 machines to run it, and that's it. If he wants it in 2 hours, you make that into 20 machines, right? And that will give you the outcome that you're looking for. So that's one of the things, because when you have a long running server, anything can happen. And sometimes a server can basically, restart, like, weekly restart for, just to make sure it works properly. And if you say, okay, no, I have my computer, I'm going to leave it on for 1 week, your computer will at some point, give up, right? So it needs a restart too. So that's when all those problems will come in. So because it's automation, you can actually say when to run it. You can actually divide the test and run it into like 10 different computers if you want to, 10 different machines if you want to, 10 different servers if you want to. And in order for you to even run it in parallel, you can actually go ahead and distribute that. You don't even have to like do it manually, right? It could be done programmatically using softwares, right? So, and that's why automation is allowing a development team to be able to release every 2 weeks, right? And it adds a lot of value. Now, what are the disadvantage of manual testing that you can think of, right? So if you okay, now it's like, okay, if you have a huge number of test cases, automation is really, really gonna help, right? But I'm saying, what are some things that you can think of in terms of manual testing that will really be painful for you to go through if you don't have automation?
The amount of test cases you have to do.
Okay, so we talked about it. 1650, it's gonna be huge number. That's a challenge. But what are other things that you can think about?
Not enough time.
Okay. That's also related to the numbers of test cases. Do you think machine have feelings? Who has feelings? Human, right?
Human.
Okay, so let's say Piero had a fight with his girlfriend. And now he's asked to do the 1650 test cases. And he's given 1 week, but then he's going through this ongoing fight. You know, what do you think is going to happen?
It'd be a lot
Let's
Not
say
enough focus.
he just started, he finished 150 today, and then somehow he had a fight and he's talking to his girlfriend. He come back and be like, no, I think I finished 250 today. You know, somehow he lost the track. Okay, no, I think I finished the 250. So he's just right off the bat. So manual testing introduces human errors, right? Intentional and unintentional both ways, right? I'll tell you, there are intentional errors too. Like, for example, you get so used to, you have 1650, you exactly know how the entire application works. You know how many test cases you have, and you go through them all the time. Every week, your boss is asking you to do those test cases, and you do it. So now there is a release, and then they're rushing you, and you go like, oh, these 200 test cases, I never ever in my life found a bug, and they're so solid. I will just tell them that it's working. And you did that after 2 years of working there. So you have 2 years of data to back it up. Like, oh no, there's no issues at all in these these 200 test cases. I don't have to run or execute to find out if there's an issue or not. And you made the choice, but then you don't want your boss to think like, oh, you didn't test those 200, so you're gonna tell them like, yeah, I did it. So that could be, obviously unethical, but also that's a human error too, because you just assuming, making assumptions that there will not be an issue. And actually that happened in real life few times where few people that work under me where, the one thing that they left, the just few test cases, they thought that, okay, it's fine. They tested like all 600-700 test cases. Okay, these 2 test cases, fine, forget it. Guess what? Everybody's, for that day, I'm not gonna name the company. Nobody worked for, I think, like almost 2 to 3 hours, underwriters, just basically doing nothing because the application was for underwriters, loan related. And they had to figure out what's going on. And that's only missing 2 or 3 test cases. And I'm like, wow, what are the odds? Like these few things that this person decided not to test that day caused an issue. And now we're writing, report to justify why it was missed. Now we're like justifying, we're reaching out, we're trying to, coming up with some sort of things to say, okay, this is not us, QA is not the issue here, right? Think about it, right? It's crazy. So these human errors, like just because you assume, just because, it could be the best intention in the world where you think, nah, man, I've been testing this 1650 and these last 10 test cases that have never given me an issue, I will just exclude those. And only that day you'll find that there's an issue. And you're going to be like completely speechless. You're going to be like, wow, I've been dedicated. I've been doing all this work. And the day that I miss those, that's the day there is an issue. And you're gonna like try to, fight with the developer, like, what the hell, man? Like, why didn't you? And the developer is gonna look at you like, I don't care. The developer is gonna be like, who was the tester? Even though he wrote the code, he's gonna find you and ask you a question. What happened? Did you test it? What are the scenarios you tested? Can I see those? Where's the evidence of tests? What are the execution that you did? So you'll be asked question by the very person who actually wrote that feature. Okay, so and that's what happens when you have, when you're, again, when you're testing relentlessly so many test cases as a human, you will have human error. Also, let's say you have high numbers of test data, meaning like you're testing with huge volume of data. Let's say now you work for Google and you want to do the Google search engine test. You cannot just simply test for a laptop and say, okay, it showed up and it's working. You have to test for like maybe like 1,000 items to see if they come up in the results or something, or at least you have to test like 1,000,000 items. As a human, you're not even able to do that. So there will be some situation where manual testing is not even gonna be effective, right? And automation is needed, and that's when you can end up doing automation. So think about all the things that you can do with automation, right? This is just a single example, but automation is definitely going to be able to help you to be more and more efficient. And also think about the situation, right, where you have 60 to 50 test cases. Even if it takes 2 weeks, you're gonna probably quit your job after 1.5 year, or maybe like 1 year later, right? You're gonna say, nah, I can't do this. This is crazy, right? You're going through every single test cases every 2 weeks. It's just crazy. You're gonna lose your mind. And that's why automation is pretty much necessary. You'll see almost every team, every company out there is asking for automation. Nowadays, if they are hiring, the job description doesn't even include manual testing, meaning like manual testing only, they will want some automation, okay? And that's why I'm gonna be making sure that you guys at least be able to write test automation. Maybe you're not gonna be able to talk about it because, it requires a lot more, experience. You're going to be able to, you have to spend a lot more time to create test cases for learning purposes. But at least you'll be able to feel confident that, okay, if I get this job, I'm going to be able to do it, right? That's the only thing that I would say you would be feeling comfortable about. But if you do pay attention, you're going to be able to talk about it too. So at least, I would say when you're in this class, try to pay attention and don't worry about the recording because the recording is for later. But again, that's not going to help you. If you can't pay attention now, then you will not pay attention during the recording, right? I mean, if you're looking at the recording, that's a guarantee, I'm telling you. Okay. So we talked about that. Fundamentals of automation. So what is test automation? So let's talk about that. When we are testing an application, okay, what do we do as a human? And then you tell me what does the maybe like machine do, in order to mimic that, right? So tell me, what is automation in your view in the context of testing, right? Who wants to answer that? And yeah, just so you guys know, we're not taking a break today, but we will. The first day, I'm sure everybody's sharp. But if you need a break, let me know. We only have like the next 20 to 30 minutes, maybe 20 minutes, and then we'll jump off the call. Go ahead, Pierre.
Yeah, I was gonna say, automation is just a faster way for us to be able to test like the software, and it's a lot more efficient.
But what is like, how does automation do it? What is it that it does? Does it do anything like other than what you do?
Oh, well, it runs the code that we pretty much implement into it. And
okay, so you're telling what to do and it does it. Okay.
Yes.
So let's say going back to Amazon. Okay. Okay. So if I ask you to test Amazon, and this is okay, let's call this as a carousel basically, right? I think this is a carousel where it moves, as you go left and right. And I ask you to do the testing. This is a test case that I want you to test. For manual testing, what will you do here? How do you make sure that you tested it? Anybody?
Are you saying when someone does manual testing, you mean like
Yeah.
visualizing, but then when you automate, the tool itself does it for you, and then you just kind of
Right, but let's say like first let's clear up the idea of manual testing, right? Which is you are gonna be coming in here, right? And you're gonna basically on the homepage, the first would be like go to Amazon.com. The second thing is that you should see this carousel, right? This section right here. And then the third step is gonna be you click on the right and you should see the next item in carousel, right? So this item could be like listed in the test case to say, okay, we should see the Reacher new episode weekly for at least, you know, or any episode of something, right? For the next one. If that's something you see, then test pass, right? So that's one test case, you just tested it. Now, how does the automation do the same thing, achieve the same thing? But think about this way, right? If you replacing human to do the automation, it has to mimic the human, no? Because the user is actually going to be human, right? Amazon used is people are using the Amazon, right? Like as a human is actually using this product in order to buy something, right? So let's say if that is the case, automation has to mimic the human, okay? Meaning like it has to act like a human, correct?
Right.
Otherwise, the test is no longer valid. If the automation doesn't act like a actual user, then what it becomes unit test, and developers already write that unit test on their side, right? Because that's just testing code. Testing code is already covered by developers, and you don't have to do that, right? So as an automation person, what we do, we try to mimic the human. So that means we only going to be doing it from the UI, right? We're going to see where do we click. So the first thing we visit Amazon.com. So if we do visit Amazon.com, I'm going to write some code here. And this is just to give you guys some idea how the code looks like. So first of all, you're gonna, you're gonna have to define what browsers do you want and things like that. So you have to launch about browser. So like, let's say you want to do a Chrome, then you can say, okay, I want to basically name Chrome. So let's say I'm just gonna, this code will not make sense. It's just to give you an idea. So page is equal to, let's say, Chrome, right? Chrome browser. So anytime I say to my tool, let's say anytime I say the word page, that means Chrome. Okay. The next thing I can say page, let's say go to again, you don't have to understand what that is. That's just, a method that will listen to whatever you say. So that means if you say go to Amazon.com, it will just open Amazon for you, right? Amazon.com, right? So now think about this way. The automation is basically, at least in this case, the tool that we'll be using, it will manipulate the browser. It will tell the browser what to do, and the browser will then listen to whatever you say, okay? So if you say, okay, browser, go ahead and do this for me, like page, let's say, now I want you to like click on something, right? And you have to provide where do you want to click. It requires the actual location of the click. So how do you know where the location is? If you just hover over, you can see there is various location IDs. Okay, look. If I want to click on this link, okay, and I have to basically get this, right? Let me just pull out the other helpful inspector. So this inspector we're going to use. So if I want to, let's say, it'll give you the code actually. So if I want to click on groceries, okay, and I'll go ahead and click on groceries, boom, you see page, get by name, groceries, and click, okay? And it did it for you. So all you need is copy this and paste it, right? In order to mimic the click, in order to basically tell the browser that I want to go ahead and click on this area, okay? So far, so good. You guys get it? You guys kind of getting a little bit of idea? Okay.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, good. Nice. Okay, so then let's say you want to do something other than that, right? So let's see what our options are here. Okay, let's place. Okay, so let's say you want to type in here. Oh, I gotta move this. Okay, this thing is kind of the way. Okay, so let's say MacBook Pro. Notice like when I'm typing, it's already like happening in here. So for typing, I know I have to do this, right? And then for enter, I have to press here. Did I write any code yet so far?
No.
No, right? But at least I know that this code works because it's doing it with me as I'm doing it, right? So if you know that as a tester, you first click on groceries and you then verify that the grocery item showed up. So I'm gonna click on groceries for now. And I'm gonna basically, to say, okay, get by text, for example. I want to verify this text is there. You see, I clicked on the text. So if this text is not there at all, then it will not be able to click. Therefore, it will give you an error, and therefore you verify that this actual text is actually there, right? But you don't even have to do that. You can actually also, without the click, you can just leave it get by text, and if it not finds it, it will still give you an error. That means you're verifying this text, it should be there on the page. But we'll talk about assertions later because you would be able to add the assertion. So for example, right here, this is an assertion. This is the proper assertions, right? You're making sure that search Amazon is visible. And this is how we actually put check, right? So after you click on groceries, you're actually looking for this item to be there. So now combine this, right? Combine this with, let's say, ChatGPT. How many? Okay, let's back up for a second. You guys feel comfortable so far with test automation? That you basically know what are the steps that you have to follow, and maybe you would split your screen. One side you're going to do the action. On the right side, you see what are the code is generated, and then you would use those code to create your test cases, right? So far, is that too much for you to take in for the day? Do you think this is easy enough as a job?
Yep.
Okay, who else? Everybody else think that this is not easy enough then? Just one person thinks it's easy enough.
It seems pretty simple.
Right, I mean, think about it. Like when you are someone who is part of a development team, right? You're supposed to build the software. That means you work outside of the box, right? You're not a cashier and follow a normal protocol for the day, right? You're not, working in a place where maybe like accounting, where exactly you have to, fill out a text file or something. You cannot go out of that process. You have to follow a standard process. In software development, there is no standard process. You make up process as to become more and more better as a team. Your team will define the process. Everything comes as it becomes beneficial to your team, because the software that you're building doesn't exist yet, right? You're still working on it. So you're still, and then the test cases that you're writing is also does not exist yet. So you still have to think outside of the box. You have to engineer those test cases, right? You have to basically use critical thinking to come up with those test cases. And that's why you become more valuable. But if you're that kind of person where you can't even come up with okay, what if somebody does this? There is no if coming out. You just simply this is working. I clicked on it, it's worked. Okay, I click on grocery and it works, and that's it. Then we have a problem, right? That means you're not adding any value to anybody, right? To the company or anything, because anybody could have done that. Like your manager could have just casually tested and say, okay, it's working. So why would they even need you? So just always think about what do you bring into the table it's not just tools, you know, it's not just coming in and like joining the meetings and just, you know, calling it a day. You absolutely have to have an eye for a tester, right? Your eye should be like, let me just mute. Okay. You should be the person who come up with, you know, like scenarios that nobody even thought about, right? You should be the one who's saying, okay, what if a user exists in, you know, this part of the country, and that user uses, let's say, Starlink, and they have the, you know, speed of, you know, not even 1 Mbps. Will the application load for them, right? That question, you're the one who's asking. Okay. What if you're asking questions like, you know, like, let's say in this case, groceries, right? You know, like what if a customer is in middle of Nevada, they have a valid address, but then nobody's there to deliver fresh groceries? Will this even show up for them? Or should it, I guess the question is, should it even show for that customer? Because that customer is gonna be unhappy if he actually clicks on fresh and orders something, right? Because it will no longer gonna be fresh after 5 hours of journey if it's middle of nowhere, right? So all of these questions you have to ask. Like, for example, let's say you come in here and you see different colors, right? Right? And then you go into this and you be like, wait a minute, these colors do not match with the Amazon theme. And it's not even uniformed with, you know, Amazon at all. Same thing for this, you know, and then you can ask this question and they will come back and say, okay, well, you know, these are logos of the other companies that are, you know, part of Amazon, you know, as a partnering with Amazon, whatever, right? Then you get the answer and you move on. But let's say you don't get the answers, you'll still have to ask this question, even though it's obvious, right? You want to make sure that these are not an accident. And you have to think like everything is a bug until it's proven, right? So everything has to be, to you, sound like a bug, and then until you actually can prove it. And how can you prove it? You have to actually test it to find those issues. So that's how the easy is gonna be for test automation. When you write the, you know, so I'm gonna be basically giving you guys easy route, and obviously it's 8:33, and I don't want to, like, I know some of you guys probably like right now have, you know, probably exhausted already listening to my voice, but just to sneak peek, right? So this is how you go ahead and write your test automation. Now let's go into the next topic, right? We talked about fundamentals about test automations, okay? Benefits we talked about. I mean, it's just like it's no brainer, right? Automation. I mean, I don't even have to say what the benefit is. Methods of tools. So we're going to talk about some tools, like for example, Selenium Playwright. You're learning Playwright, which is the most up-to-date tool made by Microsoft, and it is one of the tools that is being adopted by so many, you know, companies, even government projects, because of the security and because, you know, again, it's backed by like a huge company. So you're going to be learning this one, right? Compared to learning Selenium, Selenium learning is actually 6 to 7 months, right? And this is some kind of like promising you guys like 3 months or even less to get you to do some automation. And then we have approaches, which is codeless. I'm going to teach you guys first codeless, right? Which is you don't write code. And then I'm going to teach you guys code because you need to learn both, right? Otherwise, you're going to be limited. Then we're going to talk about the programming. Like, why do you even need to learn programming, right? Which is, you know, let's say if you're writing test automation and you have to put logics, right? So right now there is no logic. You see, everything is linear. When you record, it doesn't add any logic to it. Okay, everything is linear based, right? So now you have to add logic, and therefore you have to know programming. But then to make it fully codeless, we may be able to get away with not program ourselves, maybe AI, right? Maybe the AI will go ahead and create the logic for us. So I'm going to show you that. I'm going to demo you this right now, how AI can give you the same, apply some logics for you in your test. So let me open up my browser real quick. Okay, how many people now have, okay, I just want to know. You can raise your hand, you can talk. How many people use ChatGPT? I'm sure you use it at some point, but how many people haven't used? Like, let's say that who didn't use yet?
I'm sorry.
ChatGPT.
I haven't used it.
Okay, so Giano, you didn't use it. Who else didn't use
I
ChatGPT?
didn't use. I don't know how to do it.
I didn't either, Usama.
Fabio didn't use. Okay, who else didn't use?
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Mhm.
Does Playwright works as a path locator that people used to use before in order to get like
See,
get reach
here's the deal, right? You don't even need the expert locator or anything. The locator comes
from
with it, right?
from this, right?
Exactly. So you're able to use Playwright Inspector to get
Oh wow.
yourself everything at once.
Yeah, I was
You don't
looking at
even.
a Playwright on Google earlier, so I guess it works as that as a path locator there. All right, no problem.
Like I said, it's gonna be first we're gonna learn to automate without writing code, codeless, and you'll see. And then we're gonna do code base, and that should prepare you for actual work environment and being able to automate without getting embarrassed or without getting fear in
Right.
at work
Right. Thank you.
and having anxiety. Okay, so who else didn't use ChatGPT before I go in there? Because that makes just curious. The only two people didn't is used, and other people used it. So some of you guys that I think, okay, Galina, like, you tell me, why did you use ChatGPT?
Oh no, I haven't used it yet.
Oh, you haven't? Okay.
I haven't.
All right. After today, hopefully you guys get some taste of ChatGPT, because the reason why I said it's fully codeless test automation is because there's gonna be ChatGPT is gonna be involved. So that way you can automate it. Okay, so let's go in there. This is how ChatGPT looks like. If you're paying for it, then you get the 4. If you're not paying for it, you get the 3.5. But it's same thing. Not a huge difference. Okay, I use both. Now with the ChatGPT, right? If I was to take this code, so I just coded this, right? And let's say I take this, okay, but again, you have to make sure that you are asking the right questions. You're going to say to ChatGPT, and whenever you ask ChatGPT a question, remember, it's a person, okay? It's AI, and I'll explain. It's generative AI. That means it doesn't give you answer from Google. It already learned everything what's on the internet, and it's giving you based on the learning, not based on somebody who wrote it at some point and it's analyzing, right? It actually generates the answer for you as it goes. So every answer could be different based on your question. So whatever you ask. The other thing is, if you have a kid, if you have a child and he's 5 or 6 years old and you want him to do something for you, you have to be very, very specific. AI is the same way, right? You have to treat it like somebody who is 5 years old, but then they're crazy. They have a brain of a computer, and they can do anything. But then you have to make sure that you're very, very descriptive of what you want them to do. Okay. So to demo this, I took this part of the code, and I'm going to say, create me a test case, right? I have a code, but I want to create a proper test case and create some, checks like assertions, for example, right? So I can say something like this. I am using Playwright, right? Let's say Playwright for test automation. I have a script that needs to be rewritten, for example, and I want you to add, let's say, exception, right? Exception. Exception handling. Okay, even spelling mistakes, it will cover, but C. C. EXC. Okay, exception handle, right? Okay, now it should, okay, there we go. I want you to add exception handle, and I want you to verify, add more, okay, maybe I want you to add more verifications of the text, right? On the page, like for example, on the page. Like for example, right? And then I will go ahead and paste my code, right? Let's go ahead and do that. Okay. Okay, so it took 3 or 4 lines of code and it gave you an answer. This is the proper test case, by the way. And it's saying first it's gonna fill out information. Second is gonna click on grocery. So it gives you even in like comments, these are comments, this is not code, this is code, right? And then it says, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and verify if this exists, right? So to be visible. And then it clicks on groceries. And then if there is any error, it will also report it, right? Error handling. So notice all this try, catch, and all of that you can see that you wouldn't be able to do it yourself, especially if you're not a coder, right? So at least you get some help from ChatGPT. So now let's say somehow you didn't like this, okay? You're gonna say, you can say something like, okay, let's add more verifications for the, let's verify if the, let's say this specific element is there or not, right? So before even doing anything, so copy, let's add verification if Amazon search locator, right? This is a locator, you have to kind of learn what they are, is there, right? So it's gonna continue to do your work, right? It's basically gonna go ahead and, so notice like this time it will give you verify if the search Amazon locator is there, right? So now it says to be visible, right? So it's adding the verification for you, right? And now let's say somehow, maybe, let's say this search locator, let's say we have to add a logic to it. Let's say we want to add a logic, right? If we are, let's say, in grocery link, then we don't want to look at the search, like for example, or some sort of logic we want to add, right? So let's say if it's not there, I want you to revisit the Amazon website. That means obviously if the search is not there, that means you're not even there yet, right? Something happened. So you can say if the search Amazon locator is not present, then we must be in a wrong link. Let's revisit Amazon if that is the case, right? And so again, you have to treat it like your coworker at some point, honestly, to get the right answers. And you cannot also shy away. Like, some people, you ask like thousands of questions and you feel like, oh my God, now the AI is gonna come back and ask me like, why don't you do your own work, and you'll feel shy. It's gonna shame you. It's not gonna shame you. It's an AI, right? It's not a person. So you can ask absolutely all the questions, even something as dumb as like, okay, yeah, I don't understand why the search box is being checked, right? And you can ask those questions. Even during your learning process, like when you get your homework or whatever, when you're writing a new, doing something for this class, you can actually get help from ChatGPT. Or even you don't understand something, you can actually ask ChatGPT to go ahead and give you, things. So I'm going to show you something in a bit, but notice like the test case became even more bigger, but at the same time, it became more valuable, meaning it checks more things. It actually also have built-in logic to make sure if it's not there, then it will go back. So you have fail-safe. At this point, you have fail-safe, meaning if you accidentally visited another page, another website, obviously, if it doesn't have the right item that you're looking for, then it will go back and visit Amazon before even doing the Amazon search and all that stuff. You know what I'm saying? So your test became more bulletproof, right? It became more reliable, right? Because it will only fail if, it will not fail because you visited maybe another website before that. So that's just an example where you can add all this logic. You see, if and else, it probably doesn't make sense to you, but again, this is how the AI helps you with your test case. Now, let's say manual testing. Okay, I'm not even gonna let's say login. Okay, so ChatGPT already knows what Amazon is, right? Because it already learned it, right? So I'm gonna say for Amazon, I need you to create as many possible, I don't know if it even makes sense, the grammar. Possible test cases as possible. Let's do test scenario because I don't want like details. I want at least, Okay, so test scenario, remember I told you it's a one-liner or two-liner, if anything. So look, it's creating for you. For search, it created 1, 2, 3 for and these are like high level, right? And again, you would have to ask more questions because these are not enough, right? Okay, so now, like the reason you're getting high level is because you're not specific. So let's say for search functionality, right? So I'm gonna copy this and I'm gonna say for search functionality, I need you to list all possible test scenarios I can create. Right? Okay, still writing, but okay, let's see. And sometimes it'll say, okay, I don't want to do everything because I don't know if you need those. So tell me what you need and things like that. So you just have to read. And if you don't read, that's when we have problem, right? You have to read, you have to interact just like a coworker, and it'll do it for you. And don't be shy because it doesn't have feelings. Maybe it does have a little bit feelings there. If you try to like say something misbehave with AI, it's gonna point it out to you. So it went a little bit more, as you can see, it went a little bit more, but still not nearly enough. And that's why, AI cannot like really replace a QA person just yet, because you're gonna be not only, okay, you're gonna be using AI for sure, right? Even if the company doesn't give you permission, somehow you'll find your ways, I'm sure. And then you're gonna write those test cases, and then you're gonna come up with more, and you're gonna keep asking more. Okay, look, I can say, that's good. Let's add more test scenarios. Expanding on the search functionality. So it's gonna go ahead and now create more. I can keep going. Let's go and do more. Let's go and do more until it says, okay, I'm sorry, there is no more, right? So this is just a small demo that, yes, for manual test cases, you'll probably get a lot of help from the AI to create those. For automation, you'll also get a lot of help for creating those also, because again, AI knows everything. But you need to be able to, have AI on your side by knowing how to use it properly. So in this course, when you get an assignment for automation, feel free to use AI, not a problem, but you should be able to explain. That means if you do use AI to create test cases, you should also ask him to explain to you line by line, so you can later explain to us. So that's the only ask that I will have. So think about that, and let's say you join a company and they support AI 100%. That doesn't mean they'll give you access to ChatGPT. They'll give you access to like a tool that has built-in ChatGPT. Okay. and there you would be able to use the ChatGPT. It's like it's gonna look different because maybe Microsoft, right? So if you have if your company have all the Microsoft tools, then you already have ChatGPT in your Edge browser. On your Edge browser, if you use it, it will already give you ChatGPT on it. So, and most of the companies out there actually uses Microsoft Edge because they use Microsoft tools, and those who doesn't use Microsoft tools, you'll be able probably be able to use ChatGPT openly. They don't really ban ChatGPT yet. They're trying to embrace it, right? They're trying to like include that into work environment so that way people can be more efficient and fast. There are positions for ChatGPT, right? There are positions called prompt engineer. So that means you are a person who knows how to ask questions to ChatGPT and properly get the proper answers from it, right? That means you're very efficient using ChatGPT. Then you become a prompt engineer. That means you have a job. And prompt engineer makes like 120, 130 easily. So you're just asking questions to ChatGPT, and that's it all day long. That's all you do as your job. Okay. So learning this will probably help regardless, right? If you go into automation or not. The other thing you're going to learn is GitHub. Okay. Okay, so GitHub is basically also has ChatGPT built into it. So if you have GitHub access, you can also like do AI-based coding. But in GitHub, you would be pushing code and pulling code, because when you write code for your team, for your company, you would have to deliver the code, right? So whatever code you wrote, like for example, this much, you would have to push it at some point, and that's where all the code is going to go, this website, right? Where you will have a link, and you're going to basically just go ahead and it's like, think about a share folder in here, okay? And you're going to be able to push your code just like a Dropbox. And so I'm going to have to teach you how to use GitHub. By the way, if I ask right now, Playwright, hey, how do I teach me GitHub? And it's already excited about it, and it's going to teach you, right? And so everything that I said today, everything that I, try to, explain today, you can actually go ahead and ask ChatGPT anything that you're not clarified, and it'll give you an answer. So like, let's say this is very hard for you to understand, right? Somehow like, oh no, I don't understand this. Okay, explain to me as if I am a 5 years old. Okay, I'm gonna stop this and I'm gonna ask this question again. Okay. Very simple, right? Imagine you have a box of crayon and right? So like really like anything that you ask, it'll go ahead and try to give you, there is no for an answer here. So you will get the answer, right? So like, let's say, for example, I don't have a good excuse to take a day off tomorrow, but I need a email to be sent out to my manager. Can you write an email? I mean, obviously I have a lot of spelling mistakes, but I'm sure ChatGPT knows what I meant, right?
Can I send you that email later, just in case?
Look at that.
Sorry.
Oh, so look at that. Let's read this. Although I don't have a specific emergency, I believe that taking this day will allow me to address some personal matters and return to work with full focus and productivity. I mean, if I am a manager and I hear this, I'm like, okay, that's it. I want this guy to be refreshed and come back more healthier mentally, right? And I'll just say, okay, sure. But then like, let's say you're not happy with the, this is, my manager is not going to be okay with this. He's just really picky. My manager, let's see, manager is really critical. He won't accept this. Can you add something health related? So now it became like urgent sick leave for tomorrow, right? And then obviously you can read the next thing. Okay, now like, no, I did sick leave last week, for example, right? Let's find another way. And I'm not really like giving a break, right? I'm not giving it a break. Like, okay, he did it, I take the answer. Boom. No. Okay, so now it's asking for a personal day. Okay, fine, this will work, but I need you to write it in a way so it's easy to read. And also it sounds like me as a person. It got a little bit better, right? Now it doesn't sound like a machine, right? Okay, so now that's done. You can continue improve on this. You can continue improve on this. I'm like, okay, let's sounds very like, let's say, professional and like an actual person. Like, for example, this. I mean, obviously I'm making a lot of spelling mistake in purpose. I'm not taking my time, but it still gets it, right? So now you got a different version. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna say, you know what? I just want to quit, right? Right. Let's write in a permission letter. Okay, so now that this, okay. You know what? Let's ask him to get paid for my unpaid vacation. Some leave in the letter. I mean, when can we stop, right? It's not a human, right? So the reason I'm asking all these exhaustive questions and like unreasonable ask is because you can ask anything. You can actually go ahead and not have to be like very ashamed thinking like, oh my God, I'm even asking to do this for me. As long as you know what this is, then you should be fine. Again, generative AI, like, I don't know your perspective, what is AI, right? AI, just like a human being who learns it, not just gonna go ahead and copy paste the answers. It learns it, and then based on the knowledge, it gives you an answer. That's what the generative AI is, right? So if that is the case, that means there is no limitation. There is not a lot of limitation that it cannot do. As long as it has the knowledge, it will be able to do it. So now, even if it doesn't have knowledge, you can actually provide the knowledge and it will still do it for you, right? You can actually get the knowledge from online and you can say, oh, let's do this for me. So let's find something in GitHub, like maybe find somebody's project, okay? Let's say chatbot or something. So we're gonna go into somebody's project, and these are open source, you know, somebody has. So this guy built a chatbot. I'm gonna go into the source code. I'm gonna go into maybe the rules. I'm gonna go into, let's say, pixel rule right there. You know, this is a JSON. I'm gonna copy this. Okay, and I'm gonna say this JSON probably has, so I'm gonna say, I am going to give you a JSON. I need you to add random data and make the objects in JSON to 100. Okay, so like, I mean, And that's why you got to know a little bit of programming, because it kind of like, these are objects, right? These are objects, you know. So it's analyzing, and then it'll create a new JSON for you. And we'll call us finish analyzing. But you can actually teach something to ChatGPT and say, okay, here is what I have to say about this, and based on this knowledge, I want you to give me this, right? So see, I have extended the data, including 100 objects, and it'll go ahead and now give me that, right? See, and boom, it'll randomly create all this stuff, right? Okay, so as you can see, it's writing the code, you know. So I'm gonna stop that. I'm gonna say something like this. Look, I am lazy and don't wanna log into my Facebook on my own. Can you give me a playwright code? Right? So remember playwright, we're gonna learn that, right? To log in to Facebook automatically. Okay, so then boom, here's the code. He's gonna use Chrome. He's gonna go to Facebook. He's gonna enter your username. So you just gotta replace this and this, and boom, you're logged in, right? And then obviously you're gonna see this on your browser when the browser opens up after you run this code. So now let's say for whatever reason you got this code, but you don't know what to do with it. Okay, I am not sure what to do with this. Can you give me all the steps to set up on my computer? Right, and let's see what it does. Oh, wow, okay. So it's giving you step number 1. You need to know JS, and obviously we're gonna learn this. And then it tells you what to execute. Like, let's say you're gonna interrupt, right? You're gonna say, go ahead. Well, I don't have a Mac. It's a Windows. Can you only give steps to set up for Windows, let's say? Oh, wow. So you see, it's just giving you Windows, right? So let's say, so you got that, all of this stuff. Now let's say you're just too much. I can't deal with this. You know what? I want something more easier. This is too many steps. Can you minimize some steps using package manager or something like that? Let's see. Right, so it's making it easier for you to set up, right? Boom, right? Okay, so it's giving you what to do, right? Which file to create. Okay, give me file name and files to create. Also where to create. And I'm trying to exhaust the ChatGPT to the point where it comes and tells me like, okay, you too much, you know, leave me alone. So I haven't reached that yet. Let's see.
Has that ever happened to you?
No, not really. I mean, there are times where, because I mean, if you see my search history, you're gonna be like going nuts. Because I do maybe like at least couple, you know, hundreds of search per day. I don't use Google anymore because it's just too convenient, right? So you see, like now it's giving you like all this, right? Okay, so look, you forgot to give me the code for each file. So notice like I noticed like there is no code, it's just file name, right? So I gotta ask for it, right? You have to ask for it, otherwise you're not gonna get it. It's gonna give you whatever it thinks you need for the time being. So you see now it's gonna give me the code, right? For each file. So now let's say I want to make it easy for people to use this at this moment. So I feel like this is a great tool. It's going to be, it's going to automate how to log into Facebook for people. Let's make it an application so we can sell this to people, right? For example, one click and you'll be login. Let's make this a Windows application. So when someone double clicks on the icon, they automatically logs into the Facebook, and browser is there for them to continue using. I mean, don't mind my spelling mistakes. Okay. All right, so now it actually creating a Windows-based application. Okay. And so first it's giving me idea. Okay. So creating blah, 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 it's giving me all this idea. This is what you need to do. Shortcut and all that stuff. Okay, fine. Okay, and then it's saying enter the credentials and everything, blah, 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 blah. And that's it. So it gave you like more like Windows shortcut. Like, okay, go ahead and create Windows shortcut. It'll be easier for you. So I'm gonna say I don't want shortcut, I want code. I don't want shortcuts. I want an Windows app. Let's create it. Okay, so this is Node.js and everything, blah, 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 step-by-step guide. And it's doing it. It's not saying, look, I can't do it, it will do it, right? So it's creating HTML file on this stuff. And I'm gonna push it to a little bit more. Okay, so it's creating the code now. So there you go. There you go, boom. So it's, defining the height and width of the Windows thing and auto login and blah, blah, all this stuff, right? So when you double click on your Windows application, this icon that is going to show up after installing, it'll automatically log into your Facebook as long as you provide the right username and password. Okay, so I mean I can continue on, right? It's never gonna finish, right? It knows exactly what to give you when you ask the questions. So with this knowledge, I think sky's the limit, right? Like you can ask anything. You can ask anything and it'll do it for you. You want ChatGPT to do some research, okay? Do some research and find me a trending news for today. Okay, so boom, it's gonna go and do Googling, whatever, sorry, Bing. Significant winter storm, blah, blah. Okay, I'm not happy with this, so I'm gonna say, can you find news for only, like, I don't know, whatever region, like let's say Nevada, whatever, I don't know, something. And see what's searching, what is being searched, Nevada news, boom. And it does the searching for you. So why do I need Google, right? And it gives me exactly what I need, right? Okay, do you think, okay, I can say now, find me a bus for, and it will go ahead and continue with the conversation, right? So, boom. And it'll probably provide a link if you want, if you tell it. You can also say something like, if you're visiting somewhere, you can say, based on, like people's experience, I want you to find me the best places to visit in this specific, whatever location, wherever you're going to be. So with that said, guys, I mean, I don't want to keep you guys, in the line. It's 9:09 right now. This is just a taste of what you'll be doing, but obviously, everything sounded very easy when I said it and when I showed you with the automation. But in theory, when you work with an application, it'll be challenging. And for that reason, I'm gonna have to teach you the both ways, right? One is code based and one is codeless, right? So that way you can actually face challenged situation using code base and be able to still automate. And then basically, at least you'll be confident with automation. If you're already working, some of you guys are working, some of you guys actually finished projects and still looking to get into it. When you're going back to the market, you'll feel much more confident and be able to at least be able to say I do automation, and this time at least you can say I actually write test automation. So that is the goal. Obviously tomorrow would be another one. Tomorrow we're going to do the same 7 to 9, and like I said, some of you guys are exploring and not necessarily going to be with us. So if you are that person, just came in to just explore, that's great. It was nice seeing you here, but but if you come back, then I'll see you again. And again, like my goal is to make sure that everybody can write automated tests, and that with or without the coding. And obviously I'm going to try to teach you guys code as much as possible. That's the whole thing. Like for example, you can already use ChatGPT to learn some of these things that we need. Like for example, JavaScript, right? We need JavaScript. So you can go back to ChatGPT and say, teach me JavaScript. Teach me JavaScript, right? In 15 minutes. Like, do you really need a book? I don't think so, right? Everything that you're seeing, I'm gonna be like teaching you guys the same. It's just that I might give you more relevant ideas, so that way you get familiar with, or you may learn a little bit faster. But anything that you want to ask, you can, right? Nowadays, pretty much everything is there, right? ChatGPT is there. So the job is going to be very stressless, right? Regardless whether you do automation or manual testing, it's going to be stressless because you have a coworker who does everything for you and he doesn't complain ever, right? So that's one thing that you need to be really good at. But also, in order to get the job, you have to say, automation. So that's why we have to learn automation in both ways. And coming forward, we're gonna go dive into automation more. For those that are brand new, I'm gonna just send me separate message, private message basically. I'll send you a link that you need to complete, and that will be for manual testing. I want you to it's only 2 hours anyways. I want you to just do that, so that way at least you get more idea about manual testing. And I'll try to cover as much as manual testing while I'm teaching automation, because it's very related. It's related. So I'm not gonna probably just go ahead and do manual testing on its own, but I'll talk about it. I will tell you why we do such way that we do. And just keep in mind, manual testing is nothing but these 3 concepts that you have to know, right? These 3 things right here. You got the SDLC, you got the STLC, and you got the about lifecycle. If you really know all 3, then you actually know testing. And then you're not going to be clueless in your team if they ask you a question, so you'll be fine. And then automation comes in play, because you don't want to be, spending 3 weeks for running test cases. That's when you're going to be writing your test first, and then you take the benefit because you wrote your test. Now you can run them whenever you want, however you want, and that's why it's it's such a beneficial to have automation in your team. With that said, I'll see you guys tomorrow, and then I'll also probably confirm. Let's see. Some of you guys have questions, right? Okay. So all right, let's go into the questions. I think okay, so like I said, how long is the course, right? First thing that I want to do is that you guys are familiar with everything, all of the tools that we talked about: JavaScript, GitHub, Playwright. You should be also familiar with the ChatGPT. And that will take me the first 3 to 4 weeks, I think, to get you up to that much, because we're using the AI as much as possible. And then it's all about practice. But then every time you come into the class, it's going to be like, okay, let's go ahead and write test cases, right? And we're going to be doing it live. So after that, it's going to be just practice and practice and practice and practice, because you want to get so good that you don't even need ChatGPT or this inspector to write automation. You should be able to write it yourself. And so I would say like 3 months is sufficient for this course. And again, like there might be a chance where we may run 4 months, depending on the learning speed, whatever you have. And not everybody is going to stay, obviously, because like I mentioned in the beginning, right? This is for someone who's really, really interested. This course is not for somebody who's just exploring. You know, I appreciate it. You know, if you're just exploring, that's fine. But that the first 2 classes is all you're gonna get, because this is for somebody who wants to get into the field, who wants to get a job, and therefore you have to be serious. The company is paying you 100 plus yearly salary for, you know, for like doing these testings and being able to provide them with your expertise. And you have to be very serious, so that way you can actually provide that kind of service to a company, and you know, and feel good about it too, and not just like joining a company clueless, you know. So that's why I'm gonna be totally honest. If I feel that you know, you are not really here because you're, you know, looking for a job, you just want to explore, you just want to learn, whatever is the case, but then you're not doing homeworks, because you're gonna get homework after this, and then I'm gonna like give myself maybe a couple times where you miss the homework, and then after that I'm gonna ask you maybe not continue, because you know, it's not worth your time or mine. I'm not looking at, look, this class I'm gonna do even if it's just one person comes in and who's very passionate about, at least, or very serious about jumping into this career. You know, so not everybody has to be here. I rather work with people that really, really in need of a job, rather than somebody who may already have a, you know, like a business, or somebody who already has good situation in life. So just keep that in mind. I just need you to be focused. And then obviously this is being recorded, so I will send you the recording at the end of the day, but do not wait for the recording. Don't rely on the recording, because you're gonna fall asleep. It's 2 hours plus. If you couldn't pay attention now, then you can't later. That's the, you know, human behavior, right? Thank you for responses. There is assistant search for the, yes. That's the thing, right? I mean, I don't really think that you're gonna be able to find a job on your own. As long as you're serious, you'll have assistance, right? Marketing help after the job, anything that you need to make sure that you start your first day, you get that help. While in the marketing, you know, like preparing yourself, you know, like interview prep, and you know, like meetups, like when you're in the market, when you're actually looking for a job, sometimes you'd meet up with me to make sure that you have everything that you need before the job interview. You know, we'll do all of that. But like I said, it's only, just keep in mind that, you know, if you, obviously everybody's serious, right? I know that. You might just think like, why is he saying we're not serious? Everybody's serious, but until when there is a little bit of work involved, people actually, you know, step away, because the work is gonna be you doing a lot of practice, a lot of hands-on will be required, and on your 4th week, you're gonna be clueless if you're not hands-on. Let's say you didn't practice anything. On the 4th week of your class, you're gonna be like, oh, I just want to leave then, because I don't know what was going on now. And that's why I need you to, at least, it's going to be like at least 10 test cases per day. I mean, you're going to be writing automation, you know, 10 test automation. You're going to first manually write them, and you're going to be automating them per day. And that shouldn't take much long, right? Because you got the power of AI on your side as a coworker. So you should be fine. But just keep in mind, right? I mean, as soon as the work gets heavier from this, I'm gonna see at least 50% flushed in the count, and that's perfectly fine because I only want to continue teaching those that are really, really in need, because people that are really, really in need of a job, they will regardless stay, no matter how painful the learning process is. So just keep that in mind. And some of you guys are already working here, okay? And you guys are here just to learn automation. Trust me, you'll feel very, very confident in your workplace after maybe like your third or fourth class. That's how fast it's going to be. But then practice is going to needs to be done in order for you to be close your eyes and be able to automate, right? Or at least be knowledgeable, or at least be somebody who can actually talk about it. You won't be able to talk about it, you'll be able to do it through ChatGPT, just like how like when you go to Google and somehow you're able to do some things, even though you have no idea. It's gonna be like that in the beginning, and then as you spend time and automate those test cases and do the homework, it'll be a much better situation. With that said, if there's no question, we'll see you tomorrow. And obviously it took 20 extra minutes. I'll share this video in the next 30 minutes or so. And yeah, I will see you guys tomorrow, and then maybe a quiz. Expect a quiz in the next 30 minutes. And tomorrow before the class is due, okay?
All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, guys. See you
Thank
later
you.
again.
Thank you,
Like I
Joe.
said,
Thank you,
if
Joe.
I don't see you
Good night.
guys,
Thank you.
I'll.
Have a good
Sounds
night.
good. Have a good night, guys.
Thank
Oh,
you.
good night, Joe.
Have a good night.
Have a good night.